Hey everyone, really excited to welcome back Amit Vyas. You're our first returning guest here at RepVue, and we're excited to have you.
Awesome. Excited to be here, Jordan. Thanks for
Cool.
having me.
Yeah, I just checked, and it looks like we spoke to you in September 2023. So this is awesome because it's a chance to sort of revisit Samsara and kind of update things. It's a little bit of a different environment than it was in 2023.
Sure is.
So excited to hear kind of how things are changed and how things look at Samsara today.
Yeah, great question. Things have changed quite a bit. We are continuing to scale. We are now at 1.6 billion in ARR with over 4,000 employees globally. It's awesome. I also have a new position since we spoke 2 years ago. I am now the Chief Revenue Officer at Samsara,
That's
overseeing
amazing.
go-to-market sales and sales engineering.
Congratulations.
Thank
Congratulations.
you.
And I mean you've been there for quite a while, I've noticed.
This month
We
marks
track
my ninth year.
That's incredible. Yeah, we track tenure, sales leadership tenure on average is about 2 to 3 years. So you're about or over 3x that, which is impressive for sure. What would you say, like how would you characterize that in terms of why you've stuck around for such a strong long run?
Yeah. It's something I love talking about to people I mentor too, is picking the right company makes a big part of the difference. It's half of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it's like a Lego block, right? You have your skill set, you know what they are. I always write them down. Like, what am I really good at? What are my growth areas? And then how do you find the company that's going to really appreciate your growth areas, right?
Hmm.
And it shouldn't be, oh, I have this huge deficit and I got to go catch up. It's, hey,
Hmm.
I'm good at this. I think this company is doing well. And then one of the lessons I learned, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, is when choosing a company, you want a company with product market fit. It's so, so important. I learned that the hard way in my past experience. And Samsara has that. And I think, that's a big reason I've been successful at Samsara. A great company that has product market fit, that
For
plays
sure.
in a huge TAM, right? Our TAM is 128 billion. And so you're playing in a big market, you have the right product, and that really allows you to capture and grow with the company. And so for me, every time I interview now, I tell people, I've been through the IPO. I've been here 9 years. They ask me, why are you still there? Go be CRO somewhere else. And the
Hmm.
reality is, I think the exciting part of the company is just now as we go from 1.6 billion to 3 billion and 5 billion and beyond. So I'd easily sign up for another 9 years just because the fit is so perfect. And that's
Hmm.
so crucial when evaluating a company.
Let's back it up a bit. Let's talk a little bit about sort of your background and before you got to Samsara, and then we'll use that context to get into some more specifics about your leadership and the team there. So I noticed when I was doing a little research on you that you have a philosophy degree, which isn't
I do.
something you see every day in sales people or sales leaders. Tell us a little bit about that. What sort of led you to that path of study, and do you think that has any influence on the work that you do today?
Sure. Funny story. I actually started in computer engineering.
Okay.
And I think I mentioned this on your last podcast, right? My parents are from India. They came in the
Hmm.
60s, immigrated in the 60s, and it was always lawyer, engineer, or doctor. And I
Hmm.
was squarely pinned in the engineering area. And I built computers growing up with my dad. And
Hmm.
so I was like, computer engineering. And then as soon as I started taking classes, I'm like, man, this is really boring. I don't enjoy this. And I would still do internships, HP and other companies in IT. So I would get the
Hmm.
internships. I was like, do I really need this degree? Because I don't really care
Hmm.
how, TTL logic works.
Sure.
It was so technical. And I remember ended up getting this job that everybody wanted from graduating in computer engineering, which was, a network support engineer. And I ended up getting that job during the dot-com boom. And I was looking for part-time, but they offered it to me full-time because it was, working at the network
Hmm.
operations center. So it was later in the
Yes.
evening. And so I'd go to class and then I'd go to this job, which was full-time. And I had the Nextel phone and everything, pager. And the guy next to me is like, you're always reading philosophy books anyway. You already got the job we're all going to get after graduating. Why don't you just go major in philosophy?
Hmm.
I'm like, his name was Chet. I'm like, hey, Chet, great idea. And so I pivoted because I love philosophy. I always just
Hmm.
had this inkling to it. And to answer your question on how does it affect my leadership today, I use it daily. And I use it because if you've studied philosophy, like Aristotle, Socrates, the ancient Greeks,
Hmm.
you are debating constantly. And it's not just the ancient Greeks, the German philosophers, all the philosophers, you're debating. So you have to be able to know how to debate logically, come up with arguments, back them up, be able to
Hmm.
see the other side too. And I
Right.
think in
Right.
sales leadership, you're doing that constantly. Internally, you're
For
doing
sure.
it with your CFO, CEO, CPO, but then externally too with customers. When you're negotiating, you kind of want to give and
Hmm.
take, and that's a balance. And I think philosophy helps you see the whole picture instead of getting this super myopic view.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, my wife is actually a philosopher, so I'm very familiar with
Oh, that's
kind of
awesome.
how that applies
Does
to
she win all the
everyday.
arguments? No, just kidding.
I'd say a good share for sure, for sure. So cool. So that's a good perspective to have. But tell us a little bit more about sort of your perspective, who you are. What are some things that you like outside of work in terms of maybe some culture, a book, or a podcast, TV show, something like that that has kind of struck a chord with you recently?
Yeah, I have 2 boys, almost 13. Next week he turns 13, and an 8-year-old, which is a lot of fun because I'm the oldest of 3 boys. And we have a lot of activity in our house. So my older one plays flag football, part of the chess club. The younger one plays soccer. So a lot of those activities on the weekend. That's how I spend a lot of my time. I love reading, avid reader. I just finished James by Percival
Mm,
Everett. Highly
hmm.
recommend that book.
Hmm.
Super quick read, great story. It's basically the story of Huck Finn from
Yep.
Jim's perspective.
Yeah,
So
I just
love that
finished that
book.
one as well.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, great book.
Yeah.
It's
Yep. A
super
couple
fun.
months ago. Yes,
It's
for
just a
sure. No,
page
it's
turner, right? When you find
really
books like that.
interesting and very different. Like not,
Yeah,
a different kind of story than you've heard, or a retelling of a story that you think you know is an
right,
interesting way to do it.
right. It
Yeah.
almost made me
Yeah.
want to go back and read Huck Finn again,
Right.
right?
Right.
So,
Right. Right. How many of these
um,
things were for
and then
sure?
I'm reading by Liz Moore, God of the Woods, The God of the Woods. I just
Mm,
started that
hmm.
one, but
Okay.
love reading.
Cool.
It's a good way. I find it meditative, right? You're focused on something. Otherwise, with my day to day, it's pretty easy to just constantly be multitasking, and I'm doing one thing, but my mind's thinking about work or something else. So I need something. I used to golf a lot, but
Okay.
golf is too slow for me
Takes a lot of
because
time.
I start thinking about work, and then I'm like, all right, ninth hole, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I actually enjoy pickleball. When
There you
there's
go.
nothing like a
Okay.
speeding plastic ball coming at your face,
Right.
you have to pay attention,
Make you
right? So
focus for
yeah,
sure. For
exactly.
sure. Okay, cool. All right. So let's bring it back to Samsara. So for anybody who is not really familiar with Samsara, give me sort of the elevator pitch. I like to think of it as like if you're at a family event and maybe your aunt who's not that technical says like, Amit, what do you do?
Yeah.
What does your company do? How would you describe it?
Samsara takes physical operations data and turns it into actionable insights. So, for example, we help businesses with large fleets, or in construction, we help with, they have large equipment that's very expensive, or, operations with distributed many locations. We help them improve efficiency, safety, and sustainability through our intelligent software and connected sensors.
So that sounds like it would apply to basically any industry that has physical machinery or trucking or any of those things.
Yeah, and it's beyond trucking, right? You have construction, you have field services, you have airlines, like American
Hmm.
Airlines is a customer, just to name one, but they have a Swiss Fort. All these different industries have these operations, which is quite honestly just been neglected for years, that we are serving to help digitize and improve their efficiency, safety, and sustainability.
Okay, cool. So you talked about the growth story, which candidly is quite impressive, right? From, I don't know, a few million, it sounds like probably when you first joined to well
Oh,
over a
we were
billion,
less than a billion. Yeah, we
less
were
than a
small when I joined.
less.
Yeah, I was the 40 less than a million in ARR. Yeah,
Wow. So from under a million to over a billion,
yeah. I was
that's
a
quite a run.
42nd
Not a lot of
employee.
people.
As a VP, I had six
Yeah.
AEs reporting directly to me. So my
Okay.
first week, I remember just making cold calls trying to figure out
Yeah,
the
yeah.
pitch.
Cool. Okay. So tell me more about that. Like what makes that's not something that a lot of people can claim, both in terms of obviously just the success in general, but also, you know, a sustained run for that long in the sales capacity. What would you say characterizes selling at Samsara, both in terms of the product and also in terms of sort of the sale, the customer base, and other aspects?
So you're asking more about the sales motion or what it's like? Or
Yeah, like any aspect there. So, why do you, from a sales specific? So, when we're thinking about like salespeople listening to this conversation, like
yeah.
what is it like to sell there that has enabled incredible growth?
Sure. I think going back to what I said earlier, when you have the right product market fit and you are able to actually resonates with the customer, that's what a salesperson wants. You want to work
Hmm.
at a
For sure.
company where you're not trying to figure out product market fit because that means it's either too early or they don't have it.
Hmm.
You want to go where I always say there's a vein, right? because in
Yeah.
sales you're looking for it. Like
Right.
where's
Right.
there more money flowing and more business going? And that's specifically what Samsara figured out. Like, hey, there's a segment of the market that has been underserved, and we can go serve it. And for us, it's literally just educating the customer on it. So for the salespeople out there, the ones who really love educating their customers, the consultative sales approach, really trying to figure out the chess piece.
Hmm.
Because I will say what's different from selling mortgages to IT to selling at Samsara is our buyers are very savvy, right?
Hmm.
Sophisticated and
Okay.
savvy,
Yeah.
sophisticated negotiators, and they will throw some curveballs at you, and you have to be able to work with them.
Hmm.
And that's where, going back to my philosophy degree, you're able to see
Hmm.
what's happening. What are they looking for? What do you want to make them feel good? So it's not something you're just constantly flipping and selling and then moving on.
Hmm.
It's a relationship based approach, consultative sale, as well as ongoing customer service is always part of sale.
A high close rate and a customer signing contracts. Are there any anecdotes that you have or signals that you hear from buyers that really tell you that that product market fit is there, like that kind of really demonstrates to you that, or to other sellers, that wow, there really is this connection in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. One, the very fact that the customers come back to buy more,
Hmm.
not only the same product, but they go and buy our other products as well. I think that's the
Okay.
number one sign that you are building something that customers really, really love.
Hmm.
And I think that's super important. The other thing I'd say is, as you are innovating these products and you're seeing it from the market, our roadmap, our product roadmap is created by our customers. We meet with customers. Our CTO, Kieran, is always out there with customers, down to, to the product managers, and we're gating feedback. What else do you do? And particularly our CEO, Sanjit, he is out there with customers going, what's
Hmm.
this? Or why are you using pen and paper there? No, what's going on? How can I help you there? And then that's how Samsara builds its product roadmap. So we know it's built not from us saying, oh, you need this. It's more customers want this, ask for it. And you'll see, at our customer advisory boards, they're always appreciating that fact that we listen to customers.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So one question that we frequently ask folks is, sales leaders specifically, is what's an unpopular opinion that you hold about sales?
Yeah, love this question. I have a lot of unpopular opinions, but I think my main one would be, where you hire from. I think most people think you need to hire from the blue chip large enterprise software company, and they have a lot of sales experience there. I go for the underdog. I want the scrappy salesperson who's worked where they weren't selling the number one software in the market. They were selling maybe the number two or number three, but they still made President's Club. They
Mm,
crushed it because they found a way, because it's a competitive market. And in a competitive market, you want the salesperson who is hustling and figuring out, reading the room, adjusting, being adaptable. I'm going to keep saying adaptable because I think it's one of the biggest changes we've seen in recent years is the ability to adapt your pitch
hmm.
and your approach, your sales approach when selling to the market. So that's what I would
Okay.
say is,
That's really interesting, because I think especially in this market, which, I mean, let's be honest, it's a challenging market for a lot of job seekers, and sometimes we hear from sellers who are looking for their next role that, like, it's difficult to get through the gatekeeper because they only want people with, like you said, that blue chip name brand on their LinkedIn or on their resume. So it's interesting to hear your perspective that if you've succeeded where you don't have those benefits, that speaks even more highly of the candidate to you potentially.
100%. To everyone out there
Interesting.
watching, if you're doing well in your craft at your company, I want to talk to you because
Interesting.
we've hired from payroll is hyper competitive, right? And
Hmm.
you have
Mm,
the large companies like ADP, but then you have companies like Paycom and others that are coming out there. And these reps that we've hired do really well. They're able to get out there, really strategically sell and win the deal and win out competition.
cool. Okay. So it wouldn't be a sales conversation in 2025, almost 2026, without talking about AI. So let's talk about AI briefly in the context of both how you sell and then
Yeah.
how you incorporate AI in the product pitch for Samsara.
Sure. So we embrace AI at Samsara in a very big way. So we have a couple homegrown tools, which is really exciting. So Samsara GPT, Think of it as Chat GPT, but for internal Samsara usage. So as a rep, I can say, I
Okay.
am selling to somebody in this market and I need reference customers. Boom, it spits it out. And you do it all through Slack. And it's a pretty awesome tool. We have Agent Inbox, which is another tool for our sales ADRs to be able to help draft emails based on Salesforce data. We use all the others that everyone else would use, like Gong Engage,
Hmm.
Exec, which is a really cool AI role player, and then
Okay.
propensity models.
Okay. And then how about
And
on
then
the
as far
product
as,
side?
yeah, on the product side, Samsara uses AI in a very big way. We are the only ones in the market that have Samsara Assistant. So again, similar, you're able to ask it instead of digging through multiple reports and multiple tabs, you can literally say, who are my safest drivers? Who is the most fuel efficient, and then why are they most fuel efficient? And it'll actually tell you what that driver is doing to be more fuel efficient. It just spits it right out. You can even go further and say, hey, can you draft an email to create a contest so everyone can beat the safest driver or the most fuel efficient driver, and it'll do that.
Interesting. Cool. And then I'm sure in the back end, you can ask it, what are the questions that are being asked of our system? And so how can we make sure that we're serving customers in that way?
Exactly. So
For
that's
sure.
one way we're using it. Like we have AI cameras, but there are others out there that have that as
Yeah.
well. But this is where we're always thinking about how can we make the customer's life easier.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. Cool. So let's get back to some of the numbers that people might find on RepVue when they're looking and doing research at Samsara. So you talked about product market fit. I couldn't agree more that the first key to being successful in sales is selling something that people want to buy, and that's product market fit. Basically, when we look at your product market fit score, you're in the 95th percentile from product market fit. It sounds like that's no surprise based on the experience that you've had. And what I notice is that product market fit usually means that a team does well relative to quota, which in fact is what we see. Talk a little bit about that in terms of how you think about quota and why Samsara is also well ahead of the average in terms of team quota attainment.
We are big on sales culture. And so we very actively create quotas based on historical data of how the teams, who's making it, what's the
Hmm.
attainment. And that's why we make sure. I mean, if it's something that's been consistent at Samsara is over 50% of our reps are hitting quota
Hmm.
across segments, right? I don't think a lot of companies out there can say that. And that goes back to the kind of the talent I want to attract. I don't want the rep I want the high OTE and I'm happy hitting missing quota. That's not who we want, right? And I think we'll get to this question perhaps later, but that's why we're really big on you have uncapped variable comp, go get it,
Okay. Yeah.
right? You should be
Right.
hungry and you're able to go get and make as much money as you want to.
Okay. Yeah. So let's dig into that. So one thing I noticed, if I had to pick an area that you're rated, most of the metrics on RepVue, you're rated like near the top. But one that you're kind of in the middle is base comp, right? So base comp you rate in the third percentile, but variable comp, your reps rate you in the 88th percentile. Is that
Right.
surprising at all to you, or is
No,
that
not
kind
at
of what
all.
you'd expect? Okay.
Yeah, that's on purpose, right?
What do you
You
tell
don't
me more about that?
Yeah, well, you don't want the sales rep that's just focused on the base. Like, what is
Okay.
base for,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I shared this story on our last podcast, but my first sales job was commission only, and I embraced it. And I said, "Yes, let's go." Because my first question was, "Is it capped?" And they said, "No, it's uncapped. Go make as much money as you want, kid." I'm like, "That's what we're going to do." I
Yeah.
learned a lot from that role, and that's why I've always looked for companies, and it's part of my DNA, sales DNA now, which is, hey, I want the hungry, intelligent reps. They're going to go in there and say, oh, you have product market fit, which I'll talk to more about in a second. But you have the product market fit, which is one of the most important things. Now it's up to me to go sell
Hmm.
that you can make a lot of money here.
Okay. So, let's get into specifics. Sometimes a lot of people who are on RepVue want to know, is this a company where I could make $1 million a year? If you don't mind me asking, is Samsara a company where your reps can make $1 million a year?
Absolutely. I have a
Okay.
rep on track to making close to 3 this
Three.
year.
All right. All right. Good for him or her. So that's an interesting thing. Sometimes it comes up, in our conversations that in a lot of successful sales companies, the highest paid person at the company is the top sales rep. And it's interesting because that means in terms of they're probably making more than just about everybody else, including you, including the CEO,
Yeah.
including a lot of people. And
Right.
some sales leadership cultures are comfortable with that. Some executives are comfortable with that. Some CFOs are comfortable and some are not. Sounds like they're pretty comfortable with that at some
I
side.
mean, I'd love to talk more about that. We are a reward top performers. This is not where everybody gets the same amount. And quite honestly, I come from an old school sales background, right? Like I
Hmm.
mentioned, commission only, boiler
Yeah.
room environment. that's where you get rewarded. You're a hungry rep and you're looking at, hey, where can I go to make a lot of money and at the same time grow my career? And,
Hmm.
I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but we are very intentional about how we set quotas. Our comp planner is one of the best in the market, along with making
Okay.
sure you have a career development plan. I know if you
Yeah,
join our team as an ADR, you don't want to stay in ADR for 5 years. You want to eventually get to commercial AE, mid-market AE. And then if you're a mid-market AE, you want to get to enterprise, you want to get into leadership. I can talk more about that in
for
case we
sure.
have a
Well,
question
I
on
mean,
it.
you're a good example of that, I guess, right? Because you've had
Exactly.
that career progression as well. But no, let's continue on that thread. Tell me more about kind of how you think about that, because
Yeah.
that's something that reps are obviously really
I mean,
interested in.
just going back to my background, right? At Meraki, I started as an inside sales rep. And I joined
Hmm.
Meraki because I was in the mortgage industry. I was doing really well, made President's Club multiple years. And then 2008 crisis happened. And
Hmm.
I was like, okay, there's no more money in mortgages. So where do we go? And
Hmm.
so I decided to go to tech and, use my background from IT and found Meraki. And it was a perfect fit. Again, great product market fit, great culture. People really matter too. So that's where I met our CEO, Sanjit, back in 2010. And, from there, I started as an inside sales rep. And I thought in my head, I'm just going to get to the field. I started
Hmm.
there as an inside sales rep, blew out the numbers, was in top rep, made President's Club. And I remember having a conversation with Sanjit and I was like, hey, I really want to go into the field.
Mm.
He's like, yeah, I'm sure you'd be a great field rep, but I think you'd be an even better sales leader. And I was kind of like, really? And I think a few weeks later, I got promoted to a sales manager. And I was like, okay, I guess we're going this route.
Right, I guess. Right.
And I had 8 people on my team. I had to hire a few, and it's been the best experience. From there, I was the top sales manager quarter after quarter. So then I got promoted to a director. And so
Hmm.
these were the building blocks to where I am today because I had a company that also recognized top performance and valued it
Hmm.
and gave me a path.
Right.
So from there, I left. I went on to be VP of sales at a startup. I joined too early. So also, I think it's really important at what stage you join a company and what are you looking for. I hear a lot of times sales reps say, I want to go early, Series A and
Mm.
go build. Like, do you really know what building means? You're in sales.
Hmm.
Like, you are not part of the product
Right.
team. It's very important to know that you are not the one building the product. You're going to
Yeah,
be the
making
one
up
who
the
has to go
pitch
sell
on
it.
the fly.
You have to
Yeah.
make up the pitch. You have to make sure the product works and that there's product market fit. So I'm going to keep going back to that. And so, learned important lessons there. And so then when I joined Samsara, I was managing a small team and then it continued to grow and I got more responsibility. But always, I've been very intentional. And in this new role as CRO, I'm very intentional on making sure there's a career development plan for everybody in sales, whether you want to go into management, whether you want to go continue moving up market, or maybe you're like, hey, I actually want to go into sales enablement, or I have an inkling for sales ops because I just love analyzing data.
Okay.
We have that available at
So
Samsara.
that's something that you have that's basically formal for to some
It's
degree. Like
form
everybody has
It
a
is
career
formal.
development.
I'll give you an
That's
example. We have
interesting.
a
Yeah.
future leaders program where we
Okay.
gather all our sales reps, ICs, individual contributors who are
Hmm.
interested in learning more about management. We fly them in, we do a whole session and it spans over several months and it's essentially we're teaching you about what sales leadership is like. You're also presenting at the end like a final back in
Hmm.
college and with a
Okay.
group on like a new way of improving sales at Samsara with a new program and they pitch it. And if that program works, we implement it. So it's a really fun program. We also have a track for our ADR. So our ADRs go into commercial segment after hitting a certain amount of tenure as well as performance. So again, it goes back to if you're a performer, we will reward you.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. That's really interesting. I think people are going to be really interested to hear that because it's not something that you often see to that degree. So it's
I think the
fantastic.
biggest thing is, and again, in our last podcast that came out, I started my track on this IT engineering side, but I've always been a salesperson at heart. And I think it's really
Hmm.
important. I get the mentality of a salesperson. I am a
Yeah,
salesperson. So
for sure.
for
For
me,
sure.
it's wait, how will my sales team react to this? I wouldn't like this, or I would
Yeah.
want a path. And I never, not having a formal path, I thought this is important for career development. And that's why you see, I have people on my team who have been with me at Samsara for almost 8, 9 years
Hmm.
but 9 years. But also, if you look at their track record, they've been with me from Meraki to the other
Right.
company to Samsara.
Right.
So they've
Right.
worked
Okay.
with me
Hmm.
alone for like 12 years.
Yeah.
So I think that's a tribute to I really care about the team and I care about who we hire a lot.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's do sort of what I call kind of the hot seat portion of the conversation, where
Love it.
RepVue is all about transparency. It's all about feedback. It's all about real data from real reps.
That's
And
why I love it.
so a lot of that is ratings and surveys, but we also have reviews, right? So let's talk about some of that on the reviews that Samsara has on RepVue. A lot of them are really positive, but a couple of them are a little bit negative, and wanted to talk about some of those points, because not every sales org has, has their issues, and nobody's perfect, right? So it's like one of the themes that I saw in a couple of ratings were basically just sort of like, essentially the sentiment was like, it's not as easy as it used to be. I think you could apply that to sales in general in 2025 versus 2022 or before. But how do you think that, why do you think people might say that at Samsara specifically?
Yeah, I think it's changing, right? Sales is changing. Competition is always there, and competition shows up in different ways. And so that's why I go back to being adaptable. I
Hmm.
have my success in 9 years at Samsara. Boy, can I tell you, I would say almost every year I change. I learn something and I'm like, okay, we got to change that. And you have to
Hmm.
continue doing that. So the reps who would say that would be the ones who are like, I want the old days where the lead came this way and we didn't have to do this. Now, you might have to do a different way of prospecting, especially with AI tools. And so that's what those reps or those comments are alluding to. Because it is, I totally agree. It is not the same. It is different,
Hmm.
but you have to constantly evolve. I think that's one of the biggest lessons. My family and I took a vacation to Galapagos in July earlier this year, and my two boys, and they quoted Darwin. They're like, it's not the most intelligent, it's not the strongest animal that survives, it is the one who adapts. And I think
Right,
that's
right.
such a big part of, and I want that characteristic in people, because you're not selling, we also sell to various industries. So you can't use the same pitch everywhere you go. You go to construction, you're saying the same thing that you are to somebody in field services. You
Sure,
have to
sure.
be able to adapt.
Interesting. Okay. No, that makes sense. Okay. Let's talk about another one. So one of the reviews that I was looking at talked about expansion in terms of, I think, both market expansion, but also in terms of hiring aggressively can make it harder to hit quota. So how do you sort of think about that in terms of balancing growth, but also not growth of your team, but not
Yeah.
slicing the pie sort of too thin?
I think that's the most important thing, right? It's the balance of capacity, quota capacity, which is hiring the reps, and then what you're actually doing with productivity. And
Okay.
so for us, that's a delicate balance. You hire way too many reps, you suddenly feel that, hey, we carved too many account books very
Hmm.
aggressively, reps are going to feel it. And
Hmm.
so we are very intentional on how we do that. And there was one period where a few years ago we did
Hmm.
tilt in the other direction. And I
Yeah.
think that's where that comment would come from.
Yeah.
We've since then quickly pivoted.
All right, so there's a lot of good stuff in here too. So let's cover some of those. One of the common themes that I see is basically just the culture, healthy, be it positive culture. I'm sure you're glad to hear that, but talk about that a little bit. I imagine that's important to you, and how do you guys drive that at Samsara?
Yeah. It's something that's really near and dear to my heart, because sales culture kind of shapes your team. It's how you
Yeah,
show up, right?
yeah.
And post pandemic, now that we're all remote first, before we were at least, for the most part, everybody was in the office every day,
Hmm.
except the field team. And you just felt this energy and buzz. And so something that's been on top of mind for me is, how do we continue creating that? So we do a lot of things, like we do mid-market or enterprise onboarding, where we have everybody come in for a week to HQ. You get to meet the CEO and me, and you get to hang out with the team and get enabled on the tools that you're using, how to pitch Samsara, but you're also most importantly building connection, right? It's hard when you join a new company remotely and you're, oh, Jordan, let me Slack Jordan to ask a question. I don't
Right,
know who
right.
Jordan is though. You feel
Yeah.
intimidated. You feel a lot better if you and I hung out next to each other at this onboarding, and then later,
Hmm.
had a drink together in the evening. You get to know people and build a connection socially, which is really important. Again, you have to be deliberate, intentional about these things. Otherwise they don't happen. But this is something that's always, that all this feeds back into how you set quotas, right? Is it a winning culture? Is it a culture that everyone
Yeah.
feels like we're crushing? And so
No,
it's a,
it's funny you say that, because I often speak about it, and I know Ryan Walsh, our CEO, talks about it too. It's like the biggest element of a positive culture is people hitting quota. At the end of the
yeah.
day, you can have all the perks and all
You
the
can
different
have all
events
the
and blah blah
snacks
blah.
and
If
yeah,
people
boba
are right,
tea
if
or
people are
whatever the
not
heck
able to
everybody
hit
likes.
quota and make money, it doesn't mean
Exactly.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
No
it's good
amount
to
of
hear.
boba tea is going to compensate
Hey,
for
right,
crushing your
right.
number.
Right. For sure. For sure. So actually, I want to dig into one thing you said a little bit, because I think that's something that's so important now, especially for people early in their career. is the challenges of balancing, on the one hand, like the appeal of remote opportunities with the difficulty of sort of developing both relationships and just learning, especially for SDRs, younger salespeople. And so, how have you guys addressed that at Samsara?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, we did the onboarding program. So we call everybody over. We try to make like managers meet doing QBRs
Hmm.
once a quarter or a
Okay.
few times a year minimum. We do our SKO in person. Of course, we have President's Club and Winter Circle, which are fun
Hmm.
destinations.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, this year or next year, we're going to Cabo San Lucas. So that'll be fun
Nice.
for a club.
Nice. For
And
sure.
so it's a lot about making sure the team gets a chances together. One thing I really love that we do is something called the flock. So we have, reps in Austin, New York, San Diego, and there's enough, not just reps, but product employees or some sort
Okay.
of employees. So we have flock events where we get them together and our CEO, so Sanjay and I we just went down to San Diego and did a
Okay.
quick talk and then had drinks with everybody, went to the stadium there and did a tour.
Hmm.
So it's really important to do these things to keep the culture going.
Okay. So, but the base sort of structure is, it sounds like mostly remote or hybrid,
Remote
or
first.
remote first
It's
for
remote
all
first. Only
employees
our
pretty much?
ADRs are required to go in 3 days a
Got it.
week
Okay. Interesting.
in our hubs.
Okay. Yeah. Striking that balance is an interesting one. And just so we get out there. So where are those hubs? Just so people know
Yeah,
if
sure.
they're.
So we have a hub in Phoenix. If you're in the Phoenix area, would love to have you join the ADR team there. And then we have one in Atlanta.
So let's sort of look forward. So, I mentioned before, it's a pretty challenging environment for a lot of job seekers.
Hmm.
We get that feedback a lot. Obviously, a lot of the people who are on RepVue, they might be in a role and they're thinking about a new role, or they might not be in a role and they're looking for a great sales org to join. What advice do you have? You've already talked about why choosing the right company is so important, but talk a little bit more about that for people who are actively looking at jobs. Like, practically speaking, how should they go about that
Sure.
consideration for that?
I have a story for this one. So, in between, before I joined Samsara, and I was meeting with Sanjit again, if he was going to show me a demo of Samsara in 2016, I met with one of my mentors. And we had lunch and he goes, choosing your company is like the most important thing. And I was like, that's great. How do I make sure I'm choosing the right company?
Hmm.
And he says, well, it's choosing the right company. You follow my 3 Ps. And the first P is people. Work with the right people. Work with people who've done it before that you like, you trust. Boy, can I tell you how important that is, right?
Hmm.
And I'm not just saying this because he's our CEO, but Sanjit is one of a kind. He's a visionary. He's playing chess 10 years ahead. He will literally just see what's the next trend. The amount he can absorb is unfathomable. Like
Hmm.
he's a sponge. And so he's constantly reading and researching and he'll figure out, okay, this is where we need to go. How awesome is that to work at a company
Right.
where the leader, the founder is the leader and he is directing the company in the right direction? You can't beat that. So, first P for me was checked. And along with everybody else, we have our CMO, our CPO. I love working with everybody because they're bringing different experience. Our CMO is from MongoDB and Navin, formerly known as Trip Actions. She brings
Hmm.
a breadth of knowledge that's different from what we've seen from, for example, Meraki. So it's really great to have different people. I think the second P, what he said was product market fit, which I've
Okay.
hammered enough on this
Yep.
podcast, but I can't stress it enough. Sales reps, you want to join a company that's winning and accelerating in a big way. And it's not just a trend. I know there's a lot of AI companies out there that, it seems really exciting, but then does it have the right people? Make sure you follow right people, right product market fit. And then the last one is potential market. You want to play in a big market. We're in sales. So money just trickles down, right? Think about it. Your commission is just a small part of what the company's making, but it's an important part. So go where there's a big market, a big TAM.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
if you follow those three, I think
Yeah.
it's really, really important.
Nice. Nice. So that's a good framework that people can use. Okay, great. So let's see. If you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about RepVue and how RepVue has impacted Samsara. So tell me a little bit about
Mhm.
kind of either how you hear about RepVue in the process, or kind of the ways in which, RepVue has impacted, your recruitment of
Sure.
sales folks.
Yeah. I love RepVue.
Appreciate that.
And I love that. I love it because to me, it's like your baseball card, the back stats, right? You're able to see very transparently, as you mentioned, and honestly, what's going on in the market for a salesperson. So it's like the glass door for sales, but it's more accurate, in my
Hmm.
opinion. And
Yeah.
so we see people referencing RepVue all the time. I know our recruiting team monitors it very closely too.
Hmm.
So it's an amazing tool.
So obviously, as I mentioned, a lot of people on RepVue are looking for roles. What's really helpful for reps is to understand what sales orgs are looking for. So talk to me a little bit about like the types of sales reps specifically that Samsara is looking for today.
Absolutely. I think the first two things I look for always is intelligence and hunger. So these are two things you can't teach. Either have it or you don't. When you're intelligent, you can learn products, you can adapt, you can look at your own pitch and figure out how do I navigate this. And when you're hungry, you're not satisfied being number two or just number one. You want to be number one with President's Club, with every accolade that goes with it. And those are the reps. That's the kind of high performance team culture we've created at Samsara in sales. And we want to continue doing that. Beyond that, it's a track record. Hopefully you have some consistent in your experience. So you're not jumping around every 6 months or a year, but you
Hmm.
have, we all there's one or two jobs that didn't work out, but you should have a good story behind it, like why that didn't work out. And you've had, at least in your experience, a company where you were there for 2 years plus.
Let me
And
dig into that actually a little
yeah,
bit. Sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah, I know.
people ask about that a lot. Like, what is everybody, everybody wants to have sort of a great story, but there's always, oftentimes you have a situation where you thought it was an opportunity and it just didn't work out. What do you think is the right way or the best way for a rep to address that? Let's
Yeah,
assume they have a, 6 month stint, where they weren't as successful as they expected to be. Like, how would you want to see somebody handle
totally.
that in a conversation?
My first piece of advice is you will know very quickly. Sales people generally are very intuitive. We're an
Hmm.
intuitive people. So you just say, hey, this isn't working, cut bait quickly. Nobody's going to give you a gold star for staying longer than you want to.
Hmm.
So cut bait quickly because you'll just know it. And then you just are honest about it. In an interview, I've heard some people tell me, look, Amit, I got a elevated title and a higher OTE. So I took this job. I got there and I realized, things are a mess and we don't have product market fit and
Hmm.
we're having a tough time selling or they don't pay the commissions they said they would. And so that's why I'm looking to leave or I left.
Hmm.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
My red flag goes up is when I see that consistently. So let me give you an
Right. Right.
example. You're at your first job out of college. You were there 2 years. Then you joined another company. You were there for a year. Then you're at another company for
Hmm.
8 months. Now you're at another company for 6 months, and you're talking to me. What's going on? Don't do that, right? Be very thoughtful. And I wish somebody had told me that when I was younger too. I teach my kids this now too. Just you have a choice. Don't be desperate about getting a job.
Right. Right.
Go
Yeah.
to a winning company because if the company
Right.
is going up and to the right, what do you think is going to happen to you? You have to kind of hitch your wagon to that and say, now I'm betting on myself. Now
Hmm.
I'm betting on they're giving me uncapped variable comp. I know that I can go prove myself and move up because I promise you, everybody at Samsara in my org that has worked their butt off and has done well has continued to get to where they wanted to. So many of my commercial, mid market, and even ADRs are now in enterprise or in leadership,
Hmm.
which is awesome. I mean, we
Yeah.
promote almost 50% internally.
That's great. Love it. Well, that's a great point to end on because I know that, that's the number one reason why RepVue exists is so that sales reps can make great career decisions. And
Right.
sounds like you've made one at Samsara and you're creating an environment where other people are able to build great careers as well, which is fantastic. And we love to see it. So thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan. And thanks for having
Appreciate
me
it.
again.
Yeah, it's been good to speak with you again. And I look forward to the next time.